Okay, so I have two right triangles here. Let's start with number one. If I have two sides of a right triangle, how can I find the third side?
Pythagorean theorem.
Good, Pythagorean theorem. And what's the formula for the Pythagorean theorem?
A squared plus b squared equals c squared.
Okay. And which one of the sides is C? How about somebody new? Which one of the sides is C?
Hypotenuse.
The hypotenuse, right? The hypotenuse. And the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. So this is going to be my C. It doesn't matter which one of these are A and B. So I've got 13 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared. And you can go ahead and type that in your calculator. And
I got 313.
313. Anybody else? I think it's 225. 13 squared plus 12 squared. Can somebody else type it in?
I did, and I got 313.
Okay, I was thinking of something else. Okay, so we get 313. Then what do we do with both sides?
Square root.
Square root both sides. So I get C is the square root of 313. That would be your exact answer. What if it said round to the nearest hundredth? Round to the nearest hundredth.
17.7.
Okay, so you could use Desmos or your calculator. So you would do the square root of 313. And 100th is 2 decimal places. All right, and so 17.69. 17.69. Okay, number 2, we still have a right triangle. We still have 2 sides and we want to find the third side. So what am I going to use? Somebody who has an answer today. What am I going to do?
SOHCAHTOA.
Okay. Not when you are just doing all sides. You don't use SOHCAHTOA.
A squared plus b squared equals c squared.
Okay, and which side has to be C? Somebody new?
Hypotenuse.
All right, the hypotenuse has to be C. So I'll call this one A and this one B. So I'll say A squared plus 6 squared equals 9 squared. So that gives me 36 and 81. And I'm trying to solve for A. So I'll subtract 36. What does that give me? 45. So A squared equals 45. Then what do you do?
Square root.
Yep, because I'm trying to get just exactly A. 45, we know a perfect square that goes into 45. What's a perfect square that goes into 45?
9.
9, good. And what is the square root of 9?
3.
3, and then you leave 5 inside. That is the exact answer. That's the exact answer. Sometimes it will say round to the nearest 10th. How many decimal places is 10th?
1.
1 decimal place. So 3 square root 5. So this one would be 6.7. All right, any questions about the Pythagorean theorem? Okay. What you need to write down on your notebook paper, you do need to write this down. Part one, we're going to be doing 45, 45, 90 triangles. 45, 45, 90 triangles. And here's a picture that I recommend you draw. So a 45, 45, 90 triangle is a right triangle because it has a 90-degree angle. And then it has two 45-degree angles. Okay. In a 45, 45, 90, these two sides are the same. These two sides are the same. And that makes sense. Why does it make sense for those two sides to be the same value?
They're the same angle.
Yep, because they're across from the same degree angle. Okay. In a 45, 45, 90, whatever these two sides are, so let's say that this was 5, then the hypotenuse is always 5 root 2. Okay, if you did the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and you knew this one was 5 and this one was 5, you would get this as your answer. But instead of having to do the Pythagorean theorem, this is a shortcut, okay? And this is something that will come up on the SAT and ACT. So it is something that you do want to try to remember and keep in mind. So we're going to do some practice problems, but in a 45, 45, 90, when you go from the leg, these are considered the legs. When you go from a leg to the hypotenuse, you multiply by square root 2. So whatever this is, the hypotenuse is that multiplied by root 2. When you go from the hypotenuse to the leg, what do you think you do, guys, if you're going backwards from the hypotenuse to the leg?
Divide by square root 2.
Divide by root 2.
Very good, Tyler. You divide by square root 2. And then you rationalize, all right? And we're going to talk about what rationalizing means. You cannot have a square root in the denominator in your final answer. Okay. You cannot have a square root in the denominator in your final answer. Okay. All right, does anybody need more time to write before I do some examples? Okay, so let's look at example number 1. I have a right angle and I have a 45 degree angle. I automatically know that this one's 45 degrees. What do all 3 angles in a triangle add up to?
180.
180.
180. So this one has to be 45. Okay. I know that these two sides are going to be the same because these are both 45 degrees. So the side lengths are going to be the same. Okay. So if this is 2 root 2, what is the value of b?
The same.
The same, 2 root 2. So that's b. Okay. To get to the hypotenuse, you have to multiply by root 2. You have to multiply by root 2. So we're going to take 2 root 2 and we're going to multiply by root 2. Okay. You only multiply what's inside. So I'm going to leave, you can put a 1 right here if you want. So 2 times 1 is 2. And then when you multiply what's in the inside, I get square root 4. Well, what do you know about square root 4?
It's a perfect square.
Good. And what is the square root of 4?
2.
Thank you. Okay, and so the square root of 4 is 2. And I multiply those, just like when we were doing quadratic formula. So that gives me 4. So the value of A is 4. Value of A is 4. Okay. All right, let's try another one. Number 2. This time they give you the hypotenuse. They give you the hypotenuse. To go from the hypotenuse to the leg, you're not going to multiply, you're going to divide, because the hypotenuse is the longest one. So these have to be smaller. Well, to get to something smaller, would you multiply or would you divide in math to make it smaller?
Divide.
You would divide. So we're going to do 4 divided by root 2. Okay, 4 divided by root 2. And that would be the same as this one as well. The legs are the same. You get the same answer. We have to do what's called rationalizing. You cannot have a square root in the denominator. So what you do is you multiply the top and bottom by square root 2. You multiply whatever the square root is right here, you multiply the top and bottom by that. That gives you 4 root 2 over, once again, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. Well, we know the square root of 4 is a perfect square. So we know that is just 2. And then you divide the numbers on the outside. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So you get 2 root 2. And that's what this one's going to equal to. 2 root 2 and 2 root 2. You're going to get the same answer for the legs. Okay. All right, looking at number 3, we have a 45, 45, 90. 3 root 2 over 2, is that one of the legs or is that the hypotenuse?
Leg.
That's one of the legs. So this one's going to be the exact same. The 2 legs are going to be the same. Okay. Now I need to get the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is longer than the leg. So if I want to get to something longer, do I multiply by root 2 or divide by root 2?
Multiply.
Multiply. So I'm going to do 3 root 2 over 2 times root 2. So I'm multiplying by root 2. That gives me 3 square root 4 over 2. And the square root of 4 is 2. And I multiply those. 3 times 2 is what?
6.
6 over 2, which gives you what?
3.
3. So the hypotenuse is 3. The hypotenuse is 3. Okay. All right, number 4, somebody who has not answered today, somebody new. What is going to be this angle? How many degrees is it going to be?
45.
45.
Thank you, 45. All right, somebody else, somebody new who has not answered. Which one of these is going to be the same as 3 root 2? The X or the Y? Which one's going to be the same answer?
Y.
The Y, good. The 2 legs are the same. So you can at least get that right, okay? The 2 legs are the same. Now I need to get the hypotenuse. Do I multiply or divide to get it?
Divide.
Multiply. The hypotenuse is longer. The hypotenuse is longer, so you're going to have to multiply. Remember in math, to get something longer, you would multiply. Okay? So I'm going to multiply by root 2. Okay? That gives me 3 square root of what?
4.
4. And what is the square root of 4?
2.
2. And I multiply those, so my answer is 6 for X. The hypotenuse is 6. Okay. All right, number 5, they did not put a 45 in here, but they did tell me these 2 sides were the same, which means these 2 angles are the same. So they have to be 45. That's the only 2 numbers that are the same that add up to 90, because they all add up to 180. So those have to be 45. Okay, is 8 and a leg or a hypotenuse?
Hypotenuse.
Hypotenuse, very good. 8 is the hypotenuse. How do I get one of the legs? Do I multiply or divide to get to a leg?
Divide.
Divide, because the legs are smaller. Okay, so I'm going to do 8 divided by square root 2. And that's going to be the same for this one too. Can I leave that as my answer?
No.
No, you have to do what's called rationalizing. What am I going to multiply the top and bottom by?
The square root of 2.
Good, square root of 2. So I get 8 square root 2 over the square root of 4. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. And I can do one last step. Anybody know what I can do last?
Divide the outside numbers.
Good, divide the outside number. So I get 4 root 2. And so that would be your final answer for this one too. So your 2 legs are 4 root 2. Okay. All right, number 6. I have a 45 and a 90. So what does this one have to be?
45 again.
Good, thank you. 2 root 6, is that a hypotenuse or a leg?
Hypotenuse.
Hypotenuse. And how do I get to a leg? Do I divide or multiply?
Divide.
Divide. You divide by root 2. Okay, so you're always using root 2. You're always using root 2 in a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Okay, so I divide by root 2. You divide these two because they're both inside the radical. Okay, you divide those two, so you get 2 root 3. And that's all you have to do on that one. It's pretty easy, 2 root 3. So that's what y is. What is x?
2 root 3.
Good, they are the same. The 2 legs are the same. Okay. All right, here's a practice word problem. Gerald is driving up a hill at a 45-degree incline. So he's driving up a hill, 45-degree incline. He will travel 9 root 2 to reach the top. How high is the hill? Okay. You can do SOHCAHTOA, but the problem is your answers are going to be multiple choice and they're going to have square roots in them. And SOHCAHTOA always gives you a decimal. So I know some of y'all would just convert your answers to decimals. That's fine. I'm just giving you a heads up. The reason why we don't do SOHCAHTOA is because your square root is going to be in your answer, and that's what they're looking for. Okay. All right, so this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. What is the non-root 2? How about somebody who has not answered before? Is this the hypotenuse or a leg?
Hypotenuse.
Thank you, Addie. It's the hypotenuse. So we need to get one of the legs. Somebody who has not answered, somebody new. Do we multiply or divide on this one?
Divide.
Divide.
Thank you, Rachel. We divide. So we're going to do 9 root 2 divided by, what do we divide by? Anybody?
Square root of
Square root 2.
Square root 2, good. And what happens on this one? It's actually a pretty easy problem. What happens?
They cancel out.
They cancel out. And so x is equal to 9. Okay. All right. Now, the last part of notes, we have another special triangle in math, and it is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees. Across from the 30 is called the short leg. Across from the 30 is called the short leg. Again, I encourage you to write this down because you can use your notes on everything, including the final exam. 60 is the long leg. Across from the 60 is the long leg. And then what do we always call across from the 90?
The hypotenuse.
The hypotenuse. Okay, here are the rules for this one. Here are the rules. The short leg is half of the hypotenuse. The short leg is half of the hypotenuse. The long leg is square root of 3 times the short leg. And the hypotenuse is twice the short leg, right? These two things mean the same. It's just which direction you're going, okay? So in a 30, 60, 90, you're going to be using the square root of 3, which these are multiples of 3, right? 3, 6, 9. So use the square root of 3. On a 45, 45, 90, you use square root of 2. And the way I remember that is you have 2 of the same angles, okay? All right. So this is something I would definitely have on a note card when I was taking a test or an exam. Just like on my note card, I would also have all the rules for rotations and reflections. On my note card, I would have the different forms of a parabola, vertex, standard, factored, and what information it gives me. I would have the quadratic formula on a note card. I would have some note cards so I don't have to flip through my whole math notebook. So that's just me. All right, so let's look at this. We have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Across from the 30 is called the short leg. It's called the short leg. The hypotenuse is twice the short leg. So this one is 16. That one is 16. Okay. The long leg is the short leg times square root 3. And that's all you can do on that one. So that's your answer. The short leg is 8. The long leg is 8 root 3. And the hypotenuse is 16. Does anybody have a question?
Could you explain that again?
Yes. So the way I'm getting this is just the rules, all right? So you're just gonna have to write these down, memorize them, something, okay? So the short leg is across from the 30 because that's the smallest angle. So this is the shortest side, okay? And they told you that one was 8. Well, the other rules are the hypotenuse is double the short leg. That's just the rule in a 30, 60, 90. The hypotenuse is double the short leg. So I got 16. The side across from the 60 is you take whatever they give you for the short side and you multiply by root 3. So it's just 8 root 3. Did that help, Samuel?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So let's do a next one. This time, what have they given you? What is the 15? Anybody?
Hypotenuse.
Hypotenuse. So I'm going to do the short leg next, okay? Find the short leg first. That's going to be the easiest way to do it, okay? So always find the short leg first. This one, they gave you the short leg first. That's pretty easy. Okay, so you want to find the short leg first. All right. Also, no decimals on these. And the reason I say that is because when you take a test, especially the ACT or SAT, they aren't going to have decimals on these problems. Okay, they're going to have fractions and square roots, so no decimals. So what is half of 15 in fraction form? It's 15 over 2, okay? So half of 15 is 15 over 2. So that is the short leg. It's half of the hypotenuse. To get the long leg, you take the short leg and you multiply by square root 3. So that's my answer, 15 square root 3 over 2. Questions? Okay. So we have a 30, so this one has to be 60 and 90. All right, what side do I want you to find first?
The short leg.
All right, you need to find the short leg first. So we need to find the short leg first. What have they given you? What information? Which side have they given you?
The long leg.
Very good. They have given you the long leg. So the long leg and the short leg are related by square root 3. The long leg and the short leg are related by the square root of 3. If I'm trying to go from the long to the short, am I going to do multiply by square root 3 or divide by square root 3?
Divide.
Divide. So I'm going to do 9 root 6 divided by root 3. You can divide the two inside numbers. So what does that give you? 9 square root what?
2.
2.
2. 9 square root 2. Okay. So that is the short leg. Okay. Now you want to focus on the short leg to give you the hypotenuse. Okay. You want to go from the short leg to the hypotenuse next. How do you go from the short leg to the hypotenuse? Does anybody remember?
Times 2.
Times 2. Okay. The hypotenuse is double the short leg. So I have to do 9 root 2 times 2. Now look, I'm not multiplying these two 2's because this one's an inside and that one's an outside. What am I multiplying by 2? What number?
9 and 2.
9 and 2. So that gives me 18 root 2. So that is the hypotenuse, 18 root 2. Okay. Okay, which side have they given you on D? What is the 12? What side is it?
The hypotenuse.
Nope.
The long leg.
The long leg.
The long leg. The hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So this is the hypotenuse. So this is the long leg. Okay. All right. What do we find first? How about somebody new who hasn't answered in a long time? What do we find next? The hypotenuse or the short leg? What do we find next? Come on, guys, participate, please. What do we find next? The short leg or the hypotenuse?
Short leg.
Short leg, thank you. So we find the short leg next. To go from the long leg to the short leg, are we going to multiply or divide?
Divide.
Divide. And we're going to divide by square root of 3. We're going to divide by square root of 3. You cannot have a square root in the denominator in your answer. So we need to multiply. What do we multiply the top and bottom on this one?
3.
Square root of 3, good. So square root of 3. So I get 12 square root of 3. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9. What do I know about the square root of 9?
It equals
It's a
3.
perfect square.
Yep. So that gives me 3, and then I divide those. So I get 4 root 3. So that's the short leg. The short leg is 4 root 3. Now I can find the hypotenuse. Do you double the short leg or do you double the long leg? Which one do you double to get to the hypotenuse?
Short leg.
Good, you double the short leg. So 4 root 3 times 2. You multiply the 4 and the 2 because the 2 is not in a square root. So 4 times 2 is 8. So you get 8 root 3. Okay. All right. Let's do E next. Which one did they give you on E?
The short leg?
Good, they gave you the short leg, so that one's gonna be a little easier. They gave you the short leg. Let's go ahead and find the hypotenuse. What do you do to the short leg to find the hypotenuse?
Multiply.
Multiply by what?
You multiply by 2.
Good. Is my answer gonna be square root of 6?
No.
No.
No, it's gonna be 2 root 3. So that's the hypotenuse, 2 root 3. You don't multiply the 2 and the 3 because the 3 is inside the square root. How do I get the long leg? How do I get the long leg? What do I multiply the root 3 by?
Root 3.
Square root of 3.
By root 3, very good. That gives you root 9, and root 9 equals 3. So the long leg is just 3. Okay. All right. What have they given you on F?
The hypotenuse.
Good, they gave you the hypotenuse. What do you find next? The long leg or the short leg?
The short leg.
Good, you find the short leg. All right, how do you go from the hypotenuse to the short leg? You're not gonna double it because you're going shorter.
Multiply it by 1/2.
Yeah, you're gonna take half of it. So 14 root 2 times half gives you 7 root 2. So the short leg is 7 root 2. All right, how do I get to the long leg? Do I multiply the hypotenuse by root 3 or do I multiply the short leg by root 3?
The short leg.
Good, so I do 7 root 2 times root 3. Anybody know what that gives you?
7 root 6.
Good, 7 root 6. Okay. All right, a house has a symmetrical roof that is 60 feet wide and has a pitch of 30 degrees. Determine X, the length of a rafter. Express your answer exactly and approximately round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. Okay, is this a right triangle?
No.
No, have they put a square to designate a right angle anywhere in that triangle?
No.
No, so you cannot assume that that is a right triangle, okay? Anybody know what I can do to help myself out on this problem?
See that one side is 30, so it must be a 30, 60, 90 triangle.
Nope, because this could be, we know they add up to 180, right? So 180 minus 30 is 150. This could be 100 and this could be 50. We don't know that it's a 30, 60, 90. We're gonna have to do something to this problem.
Can you split it?
Sokotoa?
Ooh, who said to split it?
Larry?
Good job, Larry. Good thinking, okay? Okay, we're gonna split it, and now we are saying this is a right angle. We are doing because we're drawing a straight line, so these are perpendicular. So this is a right angle. So now we know this one's 30, this one's 90, and so this one is what?
60.
Okay, so now we know this one is 60 degrees. This whole thing was 60 feet, so how long is this?
30.
All right, so this is 30 feet. And let's see, we're trying to find X. So we have the what side? What side is the 30 feet? The short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse?
Long leg.
Okay, so this is the long leg. And we need the hypotenuse, but we can't find the hypotenuse yet. What do you have to do first?
Find the short leg.
Find the short leg. How do you find the short leg? What do you do with the number 30?
Multiply it by the square root of 3.
Close. Remember, we're trying to get shorter. So are we going to multiply by root 3?
Divide.
Divide.
Divide by root 3. Okay, you can't have a square root in the bottom, so you multiply top and bottom by square root 3. So you get 30 root 3 over the square root of 9, which is 3, and divide those. So you get 10 root 3. So that's the short side. And then how do you get to the long, or the hypotenuse? How do you get the hypotenuse? What do you do?
2 times the short leg.
You double the short leg. So that gives you 20 root 3. So that is x. When it says express your answer exactly, that's what it means with the square root. So 20 root 3 is the exact answer. And approximately rounding to the nearest 100. So I would type in 20 root 3. And the nearest 100th is 2 decimal places. So my answer would be 34.64. Okay.